So at this time, I would like to introduce Greg Gardner and ask him to share with us for about 20 minutes your insights on this subject of the economics, our present economics.
Thank you, dear brother. Before I started that, I started to back in first and just extend a story about John. I worked with mine elders and Hopi elders. In the 80s, I was writing letters to Grandpa David, and John was the scribe on the other end of it and translating stuff for him. And then we didn't meet till John was here in Hawaii, living here with his family for a couple of years. And I always felt like he was a brother along the way, even before I got to come into service for him that way. And my father was a surgeon, a doctor. He was a soldier before he was a surgeon. And he taught me two things. He thought I was going to be another surgeon, but I decided that planetary healing was more the approach to go for me at the time. Disappointed him and found my own path. It's been 40 years walking that path. And the two things that I remember most from my father was claiming as a teenager in World War II that all wars are created by old men for profit. They're fought by young men for glory. When you're in the middle of the fight, it's not about either thing. It's about survival and backing up your buddy. And then you come to realize that the guys you're fighting are in the same boat you're in. Some idea, ideology, something that has brought them into this fight. And you are there in the midst. And he was in the hand-to-hand combat of the Battle of the Bulge and took many lives with his hands. And he always said if he could survive the war, he wanted to do something good with that. And he did the GI Bill and became a chemist and then a surgeon. And along the way, I just think of him as, we were talking about polarities as well in the overview of this, and most of this talk dealing with lots of different polarities. Polarities of a man. One side is the protector and the provider, and the other side is the mercenary, and in the two-hearted way. You can be a policeman truly protecting and serving, or you're a hired gun, doing the bidding of those of the wealthy and the powerful. So we all sit in these places of polarity with this. And I think of my father as regards to that polarity, that at a time, he's still alive, he's 84, but at the time of his eulogy, it'll be time for me to say he was a man that knew how to take a life with those hands and he knew how to save a life. And he taught me a lot of the medical world as I was growing up. But I got my degrees in psychology and economics, and didn't use either of them. Went on to graduate degrees, worked with some of the best teachers in the world, Bucky Fuller, Gregory Bates, and E.F. Schumacher, who wrote Small is Beautiful back in the 70s. Wrote the model grant for President Carter's solar energy work in the 70s, and it was supposed to go nationwide. And then once again, the war profiteers in the oil industry created the Iran-Contra scandal. And in the late 70s, all the attention diverted away from Carter's energy programs that 30 years later, Baby Bush held up as his new ideas for how we should deal with the world. But one of the things that Bucky Fuller told me at 2 weeks of time with him was that you have to understand the difference between making money and creating wealth. And many people can't get their ideas wrapped around that. And he also said that there are 6 endeavors that human beings can work in, that when you work in these fields, you create true wealth that will be passed on to the generations and it can never be destroyed. And those 6 endeavors are, if you're working in the areas of food, health, shelter, energy, education, and entertainment. The human spirit needs entertaining. It's not to say there can't be issues of quality around these things, but as a general idea, these 6 endeavors, with many variety of things underneath them, that you can break all those things into different categories, create true wealth, and is passed on to the generation. On the other hand, making money in a political economy, insurance companies, real estate, banking, the finance, all of this stuff, especially the things tied to central banking, are all related to war in one way or another. And I'm going to go through just a little historical sequence here in a moment, just to put us on the same page of understanding. Many of you may even know more details than I do on other things. I'm just kind of good at putting an overview out and coming to a common base of understanding. But it brings me to the second thing that my father taught me, which was the definition of wisdom. And that's called the wise application of knowledge. And in many ways, people have called me the Forrest Gump of the consciousness movement. And it's because, with a little twist on it, I'm a really, really smart man. But I have not manifested any wisdom in my life at all. I have not put much of that knowledge into application. But that is also where the human race is today. And in that sense, I call myself the overeducated, underfunded, traveling fool. And as long as you're a fool for love, you know, that's one thing. But to be a fool out of fear, and fear is the thing that keeps this bizarre, two-hearted world moving. And so we're going to look at a couple of ways of perhaps creating an alternative economy. And John later will talk about some of his ideas about alternative currencies, which is going on around the country in a lot of different places. But I want to read one thing to you here before I go into this. And this, when we leave here today, out of everything that we will share and the ideas we bounce off of each other, it's important to know we're only 2 weeks away from the spring equinox. And these are a series of events coming up in this year, 2009. They're the same ones that come year after year, but they hold much more power this year, and especially this spring equinox after this gathering. And so I want you to pay attention to these dates, and I'm going to leave this out on the floor later. You can write them down on your own screen. The March equinox, you are all pathfinders that have found your way here today. And you will find a way to create your own ceremony and talk about these questions and these ideas that we're circulating today with new people and other people along the way. So the March equinox in 2 weeks, the June solstice, the solar eclipse of July 22nd, the lunar eclipse of September 6th, 9909. There will be gatherings on Mount Shasta and in the Crystal Mountains of Arkansas, that even if you don't attend these, to know they're going on and hold ceremony in whatever sacred space you're in, you will participate with them. This is much like harmonic convergence was in '87, created so that you were to take 2 weeks out of the world and go to a sacred space of your choosing and see what of your spiritual family shows up. And that was part of the work that I did in '86 and '87 with Grandpa David to set some of that up. And then finally, the December solstice. All of this stuff culminates on the December solstice. So the March equinox in 2 weeks, culminating with the December solstice, marks the 4-year countdown to 2012. And it becomes much more real as we're going through that. 2009 is going to be full of much more economic chaos. You can expect it. 2 more million unemployed coming online, 2.5 million more foreclosures. None of the stimulus package in place is going to affect much of what can happen now. It can perhaps make a change later, but 2009 is still going to be chaos. Those of you taking a spiritual path can use that chaos to create. It's easy to create elements out of that chaos. And this was what John was talking about, the migration patterns. At times you pick up and you do the courage song and you step out into the unknown. Now you can do it foolishly and foolhardily, and you get some lessons that way, or you can do it in community and you know, with spiritual support of each other, even if we all go different directions. What we said here today will carry each other with us in our hearts where we go. And all of this stuff is talking about future events, even over the next month. It's very important to put your attention and focus in the now. And this is where all the magic and power comes from. And so in this sense, everything from Edgar Casey's work to the new physics is implying that the past, present, and future may be all happening simultaneously. And this illusion that we're in is based on the principles of light that John talked about the other day.